see you. It's been a while.
Hey, Dad, nice to see you too. How you doing? Oh,
I'm well. How are you? I see you brought a friend along to our Instagram live.
yeah, yeah. I hope so.
Yeah.
So can you hear me well? Because I don't have a very, very good connection, but I hope it works.
It does. It's a little late, but we can do it.
Perfect.
So
Cool.
we can do it. So first of all, happy Cops Day. So that's also the reason why we're here. So we're celebrating.
Happy International Day of Cooperatives to everybody.
Exactly. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much for, accepting the invitation. I think it's great that we get to celebrate. Also, you are the newly elected young scholar representative of the International Cooperative Alliance and the whole Committee on Research, of course. So you represent the young researchers. And so, yeah, for those listening, we'll be chatting today for this International Day with Camilla. So, Camilla, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself. You're also a PhD candidate, so maybe you can, tell us more about your experience so far in the academia world as
Sure,
well.
sure. Thank you very much for inviting me and thinking about me for this amazing conversation. So, yes, I am a PhD student at the moment in economic anthropology at the University of Milan Bicocca, and I research money, finance, and financial cooperatives as well. I'm doing my ethnographic research in Jamaica, so right now I'm in the Caribbean, and yeah, um, before starting my journey in the academia, actually, I was working within the cooperative movement. I was working in the NGO of one of the biggest confederation of cooperatives in Italy. So I was dealing with um, promoting exchanges and learning experiences between cooperators, Italian cooperators and cooperators in Latin America and Africa, in the idea of promoting international cooperative development. So this is where I started becoming acquainted with the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance, which I guess then we're gonna talk a little bit about it. And but now I'm back in the academia, so I'm back into the research part of the movement, as we do have the practitioner and the researcher, but we can explain that later on. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
So that's great. It also explains a little bit how you and I met. So for the background of those listening, I'm also a PhD student. I don't know. I always speak as if people sort of either already know me when they follow the term, as if But anyways, but my name is Asia. I'm doing a PhD in Ferrara on co-ops, specifically on circular economy. So I got a chance to meet Camilla at the International Conference on Co-ops last year in Athens. So that's how we got acquainted. And part of the role of Climate Circular Coop is exactly to bring academia, we can say, and practitioners together and talk to each other. So that's the reason of also something we will talk today, and it's also the reason why this is important. So again, maybe we can move to your new role. I think that's very important. You are in the middle of young researchers and the
mhm.
cooperative world. So what does we can say your role and title specifically, and what do you see yourself doing, and what would you like to bring to this new, we can say, job? Maybe it's not the world, but to this new experience.
Yeah, maybe before explaining what the young representative of the young scholar representative is, maybe we can just a little bit explain to those listening what the ICA is, because
Absolutely.
maybe uh, it's not that everybody needs to know. So the International Cooperative Alliance is actually a third level organization that reunites all the second level organization that brings together cooperatives around the world. So it's an umbrella organization where that represent around 1 billion people all over the world. Um, it is divided into regional offices. So we have the ICA in Europe, in the Americas, in Africa, and Asia Pacific. But we also have within the ICA specific thematic committees. So we have a committee that deals with gender issues. We have a committee that is dedicated to international development, a committee on youth, and we also have a committee on research, where people in the academia actually meet with the practitioner and the cooperators to foster research and on cooperatives. Because as in every movement, it's important to keep, innovation and technology up to date, and to keep on doing research on the main issues and topics. So within
Absolutely.
this research committee, where researchers from all over the world engage in the cooperative, with the cooperative research are sitting. I am the young scholar representative. So I represent the young scholars that deals with cooperative studies. And so this is my role at the moment. And we together, because you're going to be there in Leuven in a couple of weeks. One of the main task of the research committee is to organize global and regional research conferences every year to bring together researchers and discuss together about cooperative studies. So we're going to have one in 10 days in Leuven, Belgium. And in a very cooperative and participative way, I would love to gather together with the young scholar, the young researcher to establish together a strategy for the next 4 years together, and to set up some objectives, goal, and ideas. But of course, I have my ideas of what we can do, and for sure, one thing that is important is to strengthen the connection and the relations between the young scholars and the young cooperators. So all those youth that around the world are creating and funding new cooperatives, because we both need to give ourselves ideas for addressing all the challenges that we are facing. And starting from that, I think that before I go with something that might sound too abstract, we can use your case and your cooperative as a case study to just then move on the conversation. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Climate Circular Coop and what it is and how it works.
Definitely. I wanted to say that we will be delighted to have a special session where we invited scholars who are working on co-ops and circular economy, or the environmental sustainability part of the sustainable goals, we can say, to come together in Leuven. So it'll be a chance to go quite in the niche of circular economy and environmental innovation, because that's what Circular Climate Coop tries to do, which is we are born from sort of, we can say, my PhD, because that's where I focus. We grouped together the Lega Coop, which is a federation of cooperatives in Italy, as you well know, and is one of the members of the Italian Alliance of Cooperatives, which then is a member of the ICA. So just to show how this actually works, of what you described of the ICA, and we try to, at a national and international level, bring together the research that looks at barriers and the drivers of circular innovation and then environmental sustainability. So more young scholars will be coming at the end of the year as well, which will look also at the digital divide and what environmental sustainability in the cooperative world will have to do also in the next few years, because hopefully eventually I will finish my PhD, but this project will of course stay and indeed try to bring together within this topic practitioners, of course, so co-ops who are either not implementing some kind of environmental strategies, or they are, or if they're innovating or not. So we try to look at the management. So this is what we try to do as a case study, and also bring more the conversation to civil society through digital products, just like this Instagram live, just like chatting with you and you telling you us in general, that I put myself in the audience of what else is there out there and what else can we do, and also allowing cops to tell other people their stories. So the way we try to do that is also through informal interviews. So on our website we have, for now, I went 3 months in Canada, so I had a chance to meet with local Canadian co-ops, and I interviewed them and I asked them, you know, what are your challenges? What is it that you want people to know? Because that's part of the academic world, as you well know. Trying, sometimes we always remain within our little nice community. That's great. How can we retranslate what we discover, quote unquote, discover, to the outside world, and how is that useful? We also have an Instagram, Instagram, yes, but a LinkedIn network. And we ask just people to join, and just, it could be you're just interested, you're just a co-op who wants to tell your story. You go there, you publish. Thanks to the internet, you can also translate. So even if you write in a different language beyond English, you can still do it. That's the ability of bringing together people from all over the world, because we do forget also that every nation, local area, community, or co-op, the challenges are not the same. And in sustainable development, that's something that we need to always reinforce in the conversation. So that's something we also try to do. And yeah, so that's one of our aims. So that's also why I got really interested in talking with you and seeing how we can talk today about the cooperative movement. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you know, how you think the cooperative movement is actually addressing this environmental, you know, negative impact that we are having, and the challenges that that brings along.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention that this is the 101st Cooperative Day that has been celebrating. It's actually the 29th since the United Nations recognized the International Cooperative Day, but we started very years before that. And the cooperative movement per se it has a very, very long history. It was born back in the 1800s. It's very I think the history of the movement is fascinating, and what is more fascinating is that it has been able, because of the participatory spirit and the idea of always putting itself into question, to really be on the verge of innovation and to like reappraise itself and to rethink about its own identity and to try to be, you know, up to date. And it still makes much sense every time that there is a big or change in the world or crisis. The cooperative have demonstrated to be not just resilient, as we much like to use this word now, but they really provide case studies and good practices for dealing with crises and bad periods in history. So I think the challenges of climate change that climate change is posing to us are like one of those questions that the movement is now trying to address and try to figure it out how cooperative can actually address it in their own different and specific way, because it's also what it makes the cooperative different from another business. So yeah, maybe I know you know, but maybe our listeners, they don't know, but cooperatives are enterprises, but are different kind of enterprises because they
function on a different level, definitely, yes, with a different structure, and also a national level, indeed. Yes.
Yeah, because the governance is different, the governance structure, because the members democratically control the enterprise and they jointly own the enterprise. What it means is that they do take the responsibilities. They must participate in the governance structure of the cooperative in order to make it a cooperative. This is why the cooperative movement has 7 principles that are kind of guidelines that try to to define how a cooperative should work and how and how it is different from any other kind of company. So um, these these principles are the um, the voluntarily uh, joining of the core. I don't remember. I always, let me check. I don't want to say something that is not correct. So it's voluntarily an open membership. So the fact that anybody can join the cooperative and the cooperative should not discriminate towards members that want to join the cooperative. We have democratic member control, which means equal voting right, means one member, one vote. So that is very different from like
other companies, yes,
based on shares and capital. The more capital you have, the more writing votes you have. You have member economic participation, that what we were saying before. So members do have to risk their own capital as well in the cooperative, but then they get the benefits from the cooperative as well. Autonomy and independence. So the fact that in order to guarantee the democratic control of the cooperative, there should be no influence of any big corporation or state or governments in the cooperative. Then we have education, training, and information, which is key, because if you want your members to be able to participate in the governance of the cooperative, you need to provide them trainings and resources in order for them to keep on growing and keep on learning about how the world is changing, in order to make the most efficient decision for the cooperative and for themselves. So it's very important that it's one of the guiding principles of the cooperative to actually train and provide education for its member. And this is also why research and the research committee as well, it's very important and recognized as one of the most important committee within the ICA, because the committee also gets the input on what to research and on what kind of maybe even tool they can help provide for the cooperatives from the cooperatives themselves. So this is why the exchange between practitioner and researcher must be ongoing
continuous,
and
yes,
fluid. Yes. Then we have.
But I think it's useful to specify then, if we are talking about how the structure is different from other companies, that generally a co-op is founded by the same worker. So also the management style could be different. Also knowing what it means to manage a business after all, because as you said before, it's still a company, it's still a business. That also requires knowledge and know-how in that sense. So I think that is something very relevant and very important for co-ops to have access to that possibilities. And also I think something that it's a little, we can say, important when talking about the identity is also the way co-ops are known for their value understanding of profit. As you and I know, generally that's not the first value. Therefore, our question is always, how does a co-op value profit making, and the fact that they do put more values before that, you know, to for advantage their members, for advantage of, you know, social cause, of the reason why they're born, and as you said, also the economic participation of a member is important, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily profit oriented. But that makes co-op unique. And before you finish, because I know you didn't finish listing all the 7 co-ops, I always like to mention that there is a very important book for those who wish to start their journey in the cooperative studies. There is a book from Stefano and Vera Zamagni, which you know very well because they're quite the leaders of the cooperative literature. And they wrote a book, they wrote many, but there's one that is quite tiny in English, Cooperative Enterprise. And the first part, they say the dual, you know, soul of the co-op is what makes them very hard to identify, study, and explain as well, because every nation has its own co-op rules, fiscally, legally, and of course these identities are international, the ones you're listing, but it makes them quite interesting that when you study a co-op in, I don't know, Brazil and then in Italy, you do understand that the values are the same, because of course they, you know, want to favor their members, they want to favor a social cause potentially, but the way they do it and their barriers may be potentially different. And this dualship is what makes, I think, our work very interesting and engaging, and the whole movement just very enlightening. So please, sorry, just wanted to add this.
No, that's perfect, because cooperative are people-centered enterprise. This is like the correct way to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But what it means is that people are at the center, and people we all know are historical and cultural beings. So of course it's
Based,
different,
yes.
even in the north of Italy and south of Italy, the way you develop a cooperative, because it really depends on the people. It has this good and it's bad, because it also means that the business model per se is not enough to guarantee a cooperative to be good or to actually reach its own goal. But of course, if you want to have a business that is that puts equity, equality, solidarity at the center, at the core of the business, then cooperative, of course, is the right business model. But it's people-centered. It really depends on the people. And if you have bad people, you can have very bad cooperatives. So it's really...
That's very important
really...
to say, because also the narrative around co-ops is that they are naturally just perfect. We'll use this term very wrongly, but that's the sense. Instead, we do understand that the values are great and everything, but bad people do make bad businesses after all. So I think it's very important what you say. Indeed.
Also on the other way around, because we also have some countries where the narrative is very bad, and they say that cooperatives are bad, are corrupt, or whatever. It's not like, it's not cooperative per se. It's the people that animate that co-op, that use it in a bad way. So, but yeah, so we were listing the 7th principle, right? And
yes, you're missing the last two.
The last two, because the 6th is my favorite one, because it was where I was working on, and it's cooperation among cooperatives. So the idea of try to make the world go cooperative. So like I'm a member of a cooperative bank. I get my energy in my house from a cooperative energy co-op. So I know, and I'm sure that my energy comes from renewable energy. I try to buy my food in cooperatives. So it's the idea that between cooperatives, we should try to make it circular, as you say, in your cooperative, and try to like close the circle, and in order to promote this cooperative economy. And finally, but I think this is where we're gonna discuss more, is the 7th principle, is the concern for the community, which means that it's like recognizing that any kind of enterprise would not be able to function if the community that surrounds it wouldn't provide for all the services that it actually provides. Just think about any kind of factory that you have. Workers that work in the factory, they have their own families, they send their kids to school, they go to restaurant, they want to go to the movie on the weekend, and this is what allow them to work better in that factory, right? So it means that the environment that surrounds you is important, and it's important for the business and the enterprise, and cooperative recognize that. This is why they try to support as much as they can the community around them. And this is where in the discussion that we've seen within the cooperative movement for the introduction of the environmental concern, because as we've seen now, we have listed many principles and values, and environment has never been really mentioned per se. We always talk about social rights, equity, distribution of profit, but environment per se has never been a concern, because as we said 100 years ago, it was not a big issue. So the movement is actually trying to think, okay, so now how do we address climate change? How do we tackle it, and where does it fit? And probably the 7th principle is the principle where it fits best. And of course, at advocacy level, the movement is doing a lot to increase the awareness of the environmental concerns, and cooperatives around the world are doing. There are many cases of cooperatives that are doing a lot of things, but the movement per se it's difficult to assess the impact of all the cooperatives together, and there is no guidelines at the moment. If you think about, there is a very interesting tool which is called the World Cooperative Monitor. If you Google it, you'll find it, and they study the impact of the biggest 300 cooperatives around the world every year. So environmentally speaking, they try to assess the impact surrounding SDG number 13. So the one on
and others,
action.
right? They also distinguish between SDGs and co-op, so they grade based on SDG. That's right.
Yeah. So but regarding SDG number 13,
climate action,
climate action, it's very interesting to notice that, well, they try to base their analysis on the GRI, so the standardization for assessing indexes on climate action, developed by the United Nations. And over those 300 top ranked cooperatives, just 40 actually were listed on the GRI list, which is not much. And so I think there is much space, especially for the biggest cooperative, to cooperatives that are involved in the production and manufacturing, agricultural cooperative, manufacturing cooperative. Cutting off the carbon emission is the easiest solution that can be assessed. But again, how can cooperative or the cooperative business model provide really a different and unique way to tackle climate change? This is the challenge, and we could really try to focus our research and ideas in the next couple, 3-4 years, because this is where big innovation is needed, because we have to do something for the environment. Otherwise, we all know that the world will collapse. So yeah, please.
Sorry, finish, please.
No. We need to make the world understand that, also the cooperative world.
Yes, absolutely. Well, part of the research, it's shown that at least for circular economy and environmental innovation, there's very little at the time being for co-ops. So even those listening, you can go online, you can try and search, and you understand that in that sense, what me and my colleagues have sort of already discovered is that there's very little, but also the narrative in the academic world of co-ops in this particular field is being sort of either included in the discussion of only SMEs, so small, medium enterprises, or being sort of, we can say, generalized or flattened down as if it worked and functioned like, big enterprises. And which, of course, there are co-ops that are big. In Italy, we have Caviro. In Spain, we have Mondragon, which is those in the co-op movement, of course, know very well. And part of other big ones, which you would expect to do a lot of innovation in the environment. Caviro is one example. They have reports online if you're interested in reading them. They are wine, agricultural co-op wine producers. And they take waste from this production of wine and reuse it to make other byproducts. But aside from this parenthesis, it's just to mean that in general, large co-ops, even who are innovating in the environmental field, not necessarily are being included into the GRI standards, as you said. And that should identify that we are not looking at the barriers truly of what it means, to be a co-op and the unique, people-centric management structure that you have. What does it mean to innovate in this sense? Indeed. And I think in the World Monitor, you can propose another co-op to be analyzed. Is that correct? Do I remember that right?
Yeah. And they actually make 3 or 4 different rankings among the number of members, I think, and the profit the cooperative make. So it's the top 300, but the list is not always the same. So there are different cooperatives. And Yeah, as you were saying before, we there exists many different kind of cooperatives. So we have the worker cooperatives, where workers gather together to make their own job and become their own entrepreneurs. But we also have users cooperative, like for example in the financial sector, in the insurance sector. If you're a member of an insurance company, not necessarily work for the insurance company, but you are a user of the insurance company. So the objective of the insurance company is to provide you the best policies for you as the member. And then we have consumer co-ops, so where people gather together to buy products together, like supermarkets and these kind of cooperatives. But then in Italy, we are pioneers for inventing new kinds of cooperatives. So we have social cooperatives that are very interesting.
Quite a big one for us, indeed.
And I tell you, working in international development, it was one of the most appreciated innovation, and many countries have started drafting laws to do kind of social cooperative, like in Colombia, that where we work a lot. They were really starting thinking about it. And so social cooperatives there are two different kind of social cooperative in Italy, type A, type B. Type A is the social cooperative that actually aim at providing what used to be or still are welfare services, so health and education. And type B cooperatives are like businesses cooperatives, where the majority of the workers are people with disabilities, or
disadvantaged background, even exactly.
People that were in jail or that are still in jail. Yes. And then one of the newest one that I'm very fascinated by is the community cooperatives. So those new cooperatives that are born in the kind of
digital arena as well.
Platform cooperatives. Yeah, that's even another one. But community cooperatives are those that are born in very rural areas, where probably there were no more people living in the village. There were just a couple of old people living there, and like youth decided to go there and start tourism of services, or start doing any kind of business in there, and try to repopulate those areas.
Areas, okay.
The cooperative is actually the community itself. So it's like how do you say, un comune, un ayuntamiento, a major. No, major is
it's a communal area. It's a
communal
space
area
to include, yes.
Yeah, where everybody is part of the cooperative. And then we have the platform cooperatives. So in the new platform area that we are living here, like Amazon, Facebook, or Uber, the idea is, why can't like the taxi driver per se own their own platform? Or why can't we, the users of Amazon, be the one that owns the platform where we make our purchases? And so we actually are the one that benefits from the profit of the platform. And those are very interesting and challenges. And last but not least is all the blockchain discourse, and the idea of the DAOs, the DAO, and how to use blockchain to promote and invent new ways for participating in the organization. And for the cooperative, one of the biggest challenges has always been and will always be the participation of the members, because it requires time and efforts to members to be able to participate to the cooperative. And if we want our economy to change into a cooperative one, as I told you before, I'm member of many cooperatives, but I can't be active in all of them because I don't have time. I don't have time to like participate really actively in all of them. So through DAOs and blockchain and new ways of using technology, computers, maybe AI, who knows, we can find new solutions for engaged members and increase participation in the cooperatives.
But going back to the currency and economy part of a new branch was also complementary currencies, which I think you know more than I do. But the idea that a local currency, you're the expert on the money part. I'm just studying this. I'm in the circular economy section, but the idea that, just to explain, and maybe you can refine it better, that a local currency can help remain the activities of the economic activities within a community rather than, like in Europe where the import and export do happen between member states, but you want something to be occurring instead within a nation before, quote unquote, your money leaves. So the idea that also a specific currency could help that, and co-ops can help be the management role in this and take advantage from this as well, especially when there are smaller co-ops. But and also another detail that I think is important that we forget to mention is what I said before, sort of the legal infrastructure. There are so many kinds of co-ops, but not all nations in the world do either recognize them or dictate the policies that help in structuring them with specific defined helpful rules, we can say, in also helping frame their identity. Part of the issue, just we can say a fun anecdote to show also the academic side of building questionnaires. If I come to Italy and I give a questionnaire to a co-op and I ask them what kind of co-op you are, and you tell me you're a producer co-op, is that same definition when I go to Canada or Japan and I say, are you a producer co-op? Sure, if you go with the ICA definition, indeed we can provide that, and that we can provide a whole comparison. But technically, they're not the same. Their definition at a legal status in the country does differ because it differs with the objective. Of course, in this case of producer co-ops, the objective is the same or similar, but indeed in other cases, it's not always that example. And that can also influence, I sort of noticed also the reasonings of why some co-ops are born rather than others. So I feel like in Italy, as you said, there's a lot of social co-ops, which is great. They provide specific social need. Going back to culture and our history, especially in the Emilia-Romagna region, 50% of Italian co-ops are specifically based there. But in Canada, I've noticed there's the propensity to have really young co-ops as well, but also specific that are producer co-ops and maybe, I don't know, they're designers of video games. That's sort of a very interesting way of co-op because we don't see that necessarily everywhere. Like every country is good in expressing its own need or culture or policy could be helping the birth of specific co-ops versus others. So I think that's also very important to what you were saying. Indeed.
Absolutely. And like in California, there is this guy, Danny, that we met him sometime at our conferences. Is into a lot those platform cooperatives for freelance. So if you're freelance in California, there are lots of consultants and people, they gather together in a cooperative, and it's also helpful for them. It obviously depends on the environment, but yeah, the shift, what I call the shift in meanings of cooperatives around the world. It's very interesting and unique anthropologically speaking. And of course, it's important to try to find some common knowledge and some common laws that can help us to have a common framework of what a cooperative is. But sometimes this can also be binding and even shrinking the potential of cooperatives, because to help innovation, you need to set people free to do whatever they want and try to see if they want to call themselves cooperative and they're not really exactly what you think cooperative is, then let them be and maybe something interesting comes out of it, because if they choose to call themselves cooperators, then let's see, they chose it, so it will make sense somehow. And of course, this is more, I felt it more in Africa a lot. That is sometimes kind of, there was a decolonized cooperatives in Africa somehow. Now just try to find and see if new way of doing cooperative can come out of different histories, different background, different values and principles. I mean, no, values and principles, I mean, you can't really change them too much, because otherwise it's not a cooperative anymore. Really. But yeah, so it's...
Indeed. And also in environmental innovation, that is also observed, especially with consumer co-ops. I mean, we've seen a lot of, we can say this is a very basic one, like supermarkets trying to make a difference. Such a basic one, but yet the difference approach, the challenges that come with that, the expenses, a lot is about funding. You know, how can I make a difference? Am I really interested if my mission as a co-op is achieved? Should I care? And that's, I think, a general question for any business or any enterprise, whatever form, shape is, you know, do you know how much you're impacting? And that we know is a challenge, is also data collection. And that's part of the work that you and I are also doing with much bigger and, you know, bigger, we can say, organizations like the ICA, who's trying to, you know, support the data collection and being like, okay, you know, you need to know how much you're impacting. We can help you with the know-how. Why? Because this can help you choose to innovate in one direction versus another, and redefine also your co-op, especially for the much older ones, because as the academic and literature, as you well know, states co-ops generally are the ones lasting also very long, and many co-ops are very old, which is a pros and cons, but in that is also being able to redefine yourself and in a positive way, in a way that includes your members still, but does provide a shift of what society, as well as, of course, needs now, which includes also the environment. But to go a little bit to also in more detail to our conversation today, what do you think is, what I think you could list me like 3 main challenges that you've noticed, and how do you think we can overcome, considering that the International today is on sustainable development. So can you tell us, you know, maybe 3 challenges in that?
Yeah, well, for sure, I think one of the biggest challenges is always participation of the member. Because if we want cooperative to grow, it's how to maintain participation lively, alive, and to guarantee all members to be part of the co-op, even when the cooperative grows. And so the governance, the problem of governance within co-op, for sure, how to include, but not just include, but make climate action like among one of the objectives that the cooperative movement try to achieve, and tackling the climate change and to provide solution for that. Make it really distinctive for the movement that we want to, and recognize the importance of that issue. And a third one, it's, well, I would put it in, it's an advocacy and awareness raising issue, like make people more aware about the cooperative option, because not everybody knows about it. We are within the world, for us it's obvious, but it's not so common. Like me living in Jamaica now, I can tell you, in Jamaica the cooperative movement is not so widespread, and the cooperative option is not there for everybody. And of course there are historical and trust issues in the country, and whatever, we can go on and on. But still, awareness raising on the cooperative model.
And I would add communication skills, the idea that a co-op also takes pride in sharing what they do in an effective way, and even among academics, because as you will know, some of our colleagues do remain within their field, and sometimes when they could include co-op in their discussion, they are, as I said before, sort of mixed into other little groups, but never really specific. So definitely what you're saying, you're raising quite a
Yeah.
third big challenge. Yeah.
In academia, it's a
Mm-hmm.
big challenge, or what I would like to see is to like the growth of the cooperative studies per se, because now we have low students that are into cooperatives, so they are expert in cooperatives, but they are low student. Then you have people like economists that are experts in cooperative. Then you have, and of course, it's useful to distinguish disciplines because everybody can offer different
Of
insights.
course.
But it would be nice to have like cooperative study department where maybe you have different scholars on different disciplines that can provide inputs.
Well, we can say we're trying to do, because
Yeah.
my PhD specifically is interdisciplinary. So the fact that you have sociologists, economists, you whatever you call it, but you're interested in the topic per se, what can you bring and why? So I think it also, and in your case, you also come from different disciplines, so it's very interesting your work of, we can say, mixing your backgrounds and saying I'm interested in that. So absolutely. And so maybe for young scholars, so what advice? So okay, you have new scholars coming into this topic. What advice do you give them potentially to break through this third challenge?
For scholars, I would say become member of a cooperative, because sometimes it happens that scholars get interested or involved in it, but they don't put like their hands on it. While I think the nice part of the cooperative world is that you also have to experience it to really understand it. So try to also be involved in that, because it will help you understand how and which direction to give to your research and where to stress your attention on. And yeah, that's what I would recommend. And just be involved with us. Try to find us. We have at the moment, we just have a young scholar network on LinkedIn, which is a closed group. You have to ask to participate. But in July, we're going to discuss about it, and probably we're going to have much more channels of communication, maybe a Telegram group or something that it's more
Interactive, yes.
interactive, yeah. And yeah, and probably start some seminars with some frequency, yeah, because communication, as I said, is absolutely a challenge.
That is, I think that's really great, and potentially also collaborate with us, because part of the work that we do is also communication. I mean, that's my background. That's why I try to do that, because you throw in your skills and what you can, because I think it's important. And so my message out there to young scholars as well is that if you do want to tell your story, your research, you can contact me and Camilla directly. But as well, a co-op, you're part of a co-op, you can, chat with us, and we do communication, interviews and just chatting. I think that's the right questions do bring to interesting answers, we can say, because sometimes more questions raise more questions. They don't raise other answers. So that's always very engaging. But yeah, indeed. So is there anything else you would like to add, Camilla?
I think it's great. I think we're going to have more to add after we meet in Leuven with all the young scholar network. It's going to be more than 30 young scholars. So I think something good will come out of it. And so keep in touch with all of you.
Absolutely. So, and we're going to meet in Leuven, so I think I'd be very interested to maybe chat with you again on live, in person this time. So maybe you can connect with our network online, but you and I can, be in person and chat about this. So I look forward to seeing you again. And I think it's been an hour, so I think people have been with us enough, but I really thank you for your time. It's been interesting. So celebrate today and, you know, share with us your
And pick
stories
up
for those
day
listening.
again.
And thank you. Happy. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.